Following the Philadelphia Constitutional Convention of 1787, the first presidential elections were held. George Washington was everyone's first pick. My health at the time was deteriorating, and I was glad to retire to my peaceful abode at Mount Vernon. However, I felt it was my duty to come to the aid of our newly formed country. Who else could have been our first president? There wasn't a better man to run the country. He was a true leader, a man of integrity and trustworthiness. The entire nation was begging him to take on the presidency, though none of us really knew what it would entail. There was hardly anything I could do. The Electoral College has already made the decision. It was unacceptable for me to turn my back when the country called. I must admit it was a glorious day. A procession of troops on horseback escorted my carriage through the narrow streets of Manhattan to City Hall, where I took the oath of office on a Bible. We were thrilled to have him as president indeed. He was, after all, the first leader chosen by the people. By the way, what do you call a president? Some thought I should be called Your Highness, but I resisted and settled with Mr. President. Washington really spent his first term in defining what the federal government and executive branch would look like. I mean, what does a president do after all? The Constitution provides very little guidance about the presidency. George Washington moved to the presidential house in New York. In August 1790, President Washington moved to Philadelphia. Unfortunately, I was never a resident of the White House. However, I personally picked the site for the future White House and oversaw the building of the capital city of Washington, D.C. President Washington was a wise man and a great administrator. It was upon Washington to determine the role of the cabinet. He made a real effort to have a politically diverse cabinet. His cabinet comprised of four main people, including Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury, Henry Knox as Secretary of War, and Edmund Randolph as Attorney General. Washington believed that the power of the federal government was supreme. A main task for him was to form the executive branch and its administrative duties. Jefferson and Hamilton were always at each other's throats. The tension between Jefferson and Hamilton was as much about differing personalities as it was politics. Hamilton was many things that Jefferson was not, in that he was openly ambitious, aggressive, and confrontational. Every now and then one of them would find working with the other intolerable and offered me a resignation. However, I refused it every time. They got me into this in the first place, so they had to put up with each other. I just wanted what was best for my country. We, a party of Federalists, wanted a strong national government. We, the Democratic Republicans, are for smaller government and more power to the states. Economy based on industry. Nah. Economy based on farming. I despise these political parties. I always made my thoughts clear that their ideological beliefs should not have been more important than the interests of our nation. Some of the fiercest debates were on matters of domestic affairs. One such was on creating the first national bank. By establishing the First National Bank, we wanted to consolidate the finances of the country and solve the problem of the state debts. It was yet another instrument of supporting merchants and investors with the money of the people. I was with Hamilton on this one. The country had huge financial problems at the time, and the National Bank was exactly what we needed. The debts from the Revolution were enormous, particularly for such a young country. We really needed to do something. In January 1791, I proposed to Congress an excise tax on spirits. Hey, wasn't there something else you could figure out? This ain't gonna pass here in Pennsylvania. People were furious. They felt that these new taxes were what they had fought against in the American Revolution. By 1794, the rebellion had reached its climax. To arms! We won't tolerate these taxes. We didn't trade George III of Britain for George I of America. The Whiskey Rebellion in Pennsylvania threatened our government's authority, and I had no other choice but to send in the troops. The president and I personally led the troops against insurgents in western Pennsylvania. Our mighty force of almost 13,000 men was enough for the insurgents to disperse before we even arrived at the scene. It was good that the whole thing was resolved without a shot fired. A war against our own people would have certainly left a stain in the history of our country. In February 1793, George Washington was elected for a second term. At the same time, France declared war on Great Britain. This was just wonderful. The last thing I wanted for the country was to mingle in European affairs. I thought it was right for the United States to honor its treaties with France and declare war on Great Britain. Sure, Thomas, but our treaty with France was with King Louis XVI. Once again, I disagreed. We could not have afforded any such adventure at the time. Neutrality did sound like a far better option. In 1793, George Washington gave his Neutrality Proclamation speech saying that America would stay neutral in the French Revolution. Resolving our quarrels with the Brits did us a big favor. That's right, my dear friend John Jay was sent to Britain to conclude the treaty, which was beneficial to both of us. The Jay Treaty normalized diplomatic relations between America and Britain. That was a great deal. Not only did the British agree to leave the Northwest Territory, but they granted us trading privileges. I objected. Neither the House of Representatives was happy to hear about our violation of the treaties with France. I stood by my point when I signed the treaty in 1795. Your political partisanship was none of my business. The last year of George Washington's presidency was marked by personal attacks from opposing politicians and the press. Even though the public was inclined to give him a third term, it certainly wasn't in his plans. He wanted to set a precedent that America wouldn't be ruled by a demagogue. The years of public service have taken a toll on my health. I just wish to spend the rest of my life in my estate in Mount Vernon. You called me, Mr. President. Yes, James. James helped me write the farewell address. It was my final message to my fellow Americans. In the address, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of national unity, loyalty to our nation over party, and the danger of foreign entanglements.